Hello.
Hello.
If you like this podcast, we've got a Patreon. If you join our Patreon by giving us it's like a quarter of a coffee a month kind of thing, you can join our Slack and talk to us anytime you want about, we've got this Slack where we put all the links that we're thinking about and all the, just sort of subject matter related to this podcast and all this grand thinking around it. So if you come and support us on Patreon at patreon.com/grandpodcast, you can join in. What's your stuff, Ivanka? What can people do
stuff
specifically for you?
This week I've decided to ask everybody to go and check out brightonnaturalhealthcentre.org.uk, which is a charity of which I am a trustee. And now it is not restricted purely to people in Brighton because all classes are online.
Yeah.
So yes, do join in. By simply attending a class, you will help us make sure that a 40-year-old charity gets to live on to fight another pandemic or whatever the future will hold.
What was that address?
brightonnaturalhealthcentre.org.uk.
If you want to support me, join my mailing list. You get a free book called Tracking Happiness and Why It Works. And that's sort of the baseline of the content that's going to be coming through on the mailing list, where I'm just going to talk about ways that you can use nerdy techniques to use data to help you in your search for meaning, and also some stuff with productivity and all that kind of thing. So if you want to get serious about really optimizing your levels, then come to goodtohear.co.uk/free. Hello and welcome to Michael and Ivanka's Grand Podcast. We're going to take down negative forces with our thinking and talking, and we're going to make the world a better place through rambling on every week about our opinions. My name's Michael Forrest.
And I'm Ivanka Magic.
This week, we're going to try some more TikToks, because I quite enjoyed doing the TikToks last week, despite the audio tightrope that I feel like I'm walking when I've got all these extra things plugged into things. We had a extra lip-in half-hour of tech support this morning, tech mucking about. But This is also that I can record these TikToks into the computer, onto the podcast as we listen to them. So this week we've got some... What are the TikToks this week? Let me just... Oh, this Rees-Mogg. What's his name? Jacob Rees-Mogg. Jason Rees-Mogg. Talking about tuition fees. It's a good one.
Oh, I love it.
Yeah, and a couple more.
It'll be a surprise. Woo,
yeah, it'll be a surprise. Get ready for some surprises. But, we're really going to take down some rightists. How are you doing, Ivanka?
I am doing well. I'm trying to decide. I always say that, don't I?
You sure do.
I do. I always say I'm doing well. As
I'm doing well.
Scrabble around for which story I'm going to tell.
I usually go, I haven't really thought... Yeah, I've forgotten to... I haven't taken notes recently. Go on.
I'm going to say two things about my island. One, last week we became the peaking hotspot of coronavirus for the country, literally. But up to
Is it 100 deaths? 40, okay.
40. There's not even been 100 deaths in the whole country.
Oh, okay.
But we're 40 people have tested positive of the many that were tested. So It's all been a bit of a roller coaster. As one of my friends said, she said it's all, she said they are low numbers in the abstract, but when they're in the village next to yours, it's okay to be slightly disturbed by it. So that's one island story. And then the second island story is that yesterday it was extremely windy, with a warm wind that felt like somebody was blowing a hairdryer at you most of the day. And none of us coped very well.
Oh dear.
We concluded this morning that windy rain is more fun than just dry, never you know, no respite from dry, strong wind. We all went a bit doolally. I got a migraine. My daughter told me that the reason she hadn't participated properly in her Croatian lesson was, well, Mummy, while I was asleep, Daddy's ring went into my head and swirled around inside my brain, and then I didn't have a clever brain anymore.
Okay.
She told me this with a very straight face.
It sounds like something out of a bloody David Lynch film.
So I just laughed because I had nowhere to go. I was like, that's not the conversation we're supposed to be having. Anyway, so that's my week.
It's been cold here, but Sharon did clock that it was like 37 degrees in Greece at the moment. So I guess you're not far from there. Yeah,
oh, God.
Like at the weekend.
No, we're not up there yet.
It's like 4 degrees today here.
37 already in May.
Well, I mean, it's all over the place everywhere, I think. Anyway, that's climate change for you. Sorry, I should say that. That's climate change for you.
How are you?
How am I? I'm feeling a bit knackered. I don't know why. I've been coming into the studio. I've been sort of gradually getting back into the swing of playing a bit of music. I even fired up the new Logic Pro yesterday, which has all like some fancy new features. It's like using Fruity Loops, which I'm quite excited about because I was missing the sequencer that Fruity Loops had that I used to use back in the 90s. So that's fun. I've been trying to sort of like go where the wind blows me a bit, but also just yesterday was a day of like nothing working properly, and I think I'm going to start I've got my big grid of different projects that I'm working on. I'm going to start tracking whether I have horrible days, like horrible periods on any of them, and then just sort of see which ones are the most
the baddies,
the ones that are really annoying, and maybe just cut those out. So maybe the Android version of Changes might not come out if I just cannot be bothered to deal with React Native being terrible. It's just like I need a computer that's like 10 times as fast, and that doesn't exist in a laptop. But to be honest, it's all a bit like repetitive at the moment. And all of my different projects are a bit spread out, and I'm just like coming in and working hard, and I don't know. It's like slow going. Numbers on my app are sort of looking like they're kind of starting to tail off. But here's what I did. I did my tax return the minute I got my P60 again.
My goodness.
I've done my VAT return and my self-assessment tax returns this week. I'm so ahead of the game. And I thought I was going to have £1,000 to pay, or £2,000 or something, but it was just £65. So I don't know if that's something I'm happy about or unhappy about.
Yes, it's definitely a double-edged sword, that one.
Yes.
It's like, I didn't make any money.
Well, no, it's much more high-minded than that. It's the Tories just giving me tax breaks for being...
You're much more civilised than me then.
Yeah, like I'm not talking about... I think we should be trying to pay more taxes. I think that's one thing that's come out of this podcast. So, if we keep sort of like slicing down the taxes, so it's sort of like one of those things like with music. There's now a limit on how much anyone can contribute because of the tax system. In the same way that the music, it's like you can, once you've got your Spotify subscription, that's like the most you can give. Whereas when it was like, I'm going to buy an album, I'm going to buy a song, you could like give one artist loads more if you wanted to. But now there's not really any mechanism for that. And it's the same with tax. It's like, if they keep cutting the taxes, then the people that would like to contribute have no way of doing it anymore, except through dodgy private, through charities and private things, which, you know.
My tax bill was huge, so I had no prompt for high-mindedness.
All right, let's do our first TikTok. This is going to be like... Last week I mentioned pickup artist types. This is going to be an interesting conversation, I think, between a male and female podcaster. A lot of young, disaffected males, men, boys, are drawn to people like this guy. I'll just play it and see how uncomfortable it makes you. Yeah.
Someone you think is high status.
Girls that I'm attracted to.
Do you want to know the real problem? You've been brainwashed. You just named people who have something you want. What do hot girls that he's attracted to have that he wants?
Titties.
Shh.
Love and support.
What do the girls hold? that he wants. It's not titties. Validation. You have been brought up in some type of way, shape, or form and heard things during your upbringing in your teenage years that taught you need other people to tell you you're enough. So anytime you meet someone who could tell you those things, whether it's verbally or non-verbally, you gravitate towards them. And then you like a puppy dog waiting for them to give you the stamp of approval. If we always give someone else our power, what does that do to us?
Okay, so it ends rhetorically. So let's sort of like casual misogyny aside.
It'd be interesting to see how he thinks you solve the power imbalance. I think that's the... I don't disagree that, anybody who's coming onto you weirdly, who's behaving inappropriately, who's doing weird shit, has usually got some kind of esteem problem over either an overinflated idea of their worth or an underinflated. The under tends to come with anger, and the over just comes with sort of just nastiness, as a, like both of them, neither are good. So what he's saying fundamentally is, it's just like what comes after that scares me, like with his little power story.
Yeah, I wonder if we can find out. No, there's only one. He's only got one thing, so I guess we'll never know. Like, if you give, what does that do to you? Okay.
I mean,
maybe
I think it's good advice to anybody to not look for external validation of their. I mean, we talk about that. We talked about that when we talked about psychopaths. It's like we've talked about, or sociopaths, or some of these very powerful people who's, clearly mummy and daddy have not shown them enough love. And so they're constantly chasing that. Look what I can do. Look what I can do. Look, I've invented Cambridge Analytica. Do you love me now? I think it's very...
I always had this, right? Like when I was younger, I was always like if anyone sort of said something that sort of made me feel validated, I was like, I was that puppy dog. Or I was that, I would sort of... But I'd be too scared to talk to them again. I'd be sort of looking for them all the time, this person that said that maybe my dream is a valid dream. It's a hard thing to think about, because I feel like there's something here that I want to talk about, but I'm not quite sure how to, or how it's going to have value, or if it's just going to be sad, or... what would when I was younger, if I'd seen this person, I think it does hinge on what the fucking advice is, unfortunately. So.
Unfortunately, I think that's the, but I think as a topic, I have debated one of that on my topic list. Can you hear that noise in the background?
A bit, yeah.
I'm afraid there's a loo visit happening, so I don't think we could do a great deal about it. I think self-esteem was one of the things that I was going to suggest as a topic, because I think it's actually a big problem. It's a root of lots of bad behaviour or misbehaviour, or that after that woman last week, the young gun talking about that little boy behaviour.
Yeah,
it's like look, everybody without exception, every single one of us is. Well, I think. Well, I certainly. But let's not. I won't talk for everybody. I'm going to talk about me. You talked about you. Of course. You want people that you admire to tell you that you are worthy of admiration. And I think. And also, sometimes a nice substitute is people that you don't particularly admire. It just makes you feel good. But you all need that external validation. Anyone, just please tell me that I'm, whatever it is that I think. And I had this, anyway, I think this is a bigger topic, actually. I thought about it the other day in the context. I was re-listening to one of our podcasts because somebody had said they'd enjoyed an episode, so I went back to listen to it. I told you I'd been reading that book about breathing through the nose.
Yeah.
And you reacted like that. You laughed. You kind of went, you breathed through the nose, whatever. And I was like, I have to, with a reaction like that, I have to check myself, because my response to that is, oh, Michael thinks I've done something stupid. I'm stupid. No. But this is the reality. So much of my own personality and self-perception and value is about me hoping or thinking, am I clever enough? Am I am I using my brains enough? Am I delivering it? You don't, not delivering, that's a bad word. Like, if people don't think I'm clever, then I'm not, that's where all my weird insecurities are. They're not about whether someone thinks my tits look good. My insecurity is around my brain. I think this is all of this dude, you can understand why he would attract people if he's telling them to take back their power.
Yeah.
But it's whether it's done aggressively or not. Like, if you go and see if you have therapy is all about understanding your own power, isn't it? And your own weaknesses, but really about understanding your own power. And I think that, it's like these people, instead of going to a therapy session, are going to see somebody who goes, yeah.
And I think, so the thing is, like, I think, when I had the therapist of, the one that really helped me, that helped you too, that it was kind of a similar thing. You get like charged up by that experience, and there is a bit of a half-life to it. Like, sort of as the day-to-day comes, or as you kind of suddenly you're face-to-face with, like, one of the things I had, so I'll throw in a couple of things. Like, one of the things I had, going to therapy, suddenly, like, seeing that who I am is valid. I am a person. I can take up space without having to feel, guilty or terrible about that. I am a person. I have a right to exist. And I can be vulnerable, and I can, put myself out there. And then to go back to my family and suddenly realise that someone to just say something to me, and me to realise that has been the voice in my head this whole time. It's a real voice. It's things that people in my family would say to me that would make me feel really bad. And it was like, that could like trip me up and like kind of undercut the therapy again. But then I'd go back and then I'd be recharged and, buoyed again and sort of like confident again. But there is something to that, getting the recharge, but you've got to find a way that is a bit more sustainable to get that sort of self-esteem and that energy and that kind of like, just validation and just believing that what you think is valid doesn't necessarily come easily. But the only other thing I'd say is something that I actually find really useful for my for in an ongoing way is to have this podcast, because sometimes, like I can be feeling like small, and then I can go and edit the podcast, and I can think that was fun, and I'll kind of come out feeling a lot more like I know who I am, and I'm not like scared to just project that out into people. I might have been sort of more cautious about doing that too otherwise, and that has led to a magnetism of certain people towards they sort of suddenly want to be my friend, because I'm able to kind of project that because of the confidence of just like listening back and editing the podcast. Well, so it's just start a podcast.
Yeah, I do think that ultimately this podcast is just therapy for both of us, but hopefully it's of benefit to somebody else. One thing I was going to say about what you was about these TikTok things that I noticed when I listened back to last week's is that the people that so that Amazon one about unions was very factual and calm. Amazon doesn't agree with this. They're not anti-union, but they are neutral. But it was delivered, here's some facts, here's a clip from a video, here's a story. The Trump wearing girl going on about attacks on boys was like shouting and wah, and then that what's his face, whose name has not gone into my head.
You don't need it, Shapiro.
The Shapiro dude is like, yeah, and what about this and what about that? It's like your whole delivery, and this guy and his audience, they're like, yeah, what have they got? Do we not got? And all this, like, it's like, it's just not very civilised, is it, Michael? And maybe that's part of the problem. Like, I don't talk to people. I don't tend to talk. And I'm a very high energy community. My daughter, I was on the phone to my mum this morning, and my daughter just went, shh. It's like, don't you shush me, child. Because I was talking about my mum. I was like, get on the phone and sort it out. She's like, calm down, Mummy. I'm not uncalm. I'm just telling a story. It's just like... but yeah, so as somebody who's quite a high energy, high octane communicator in normal life, I actually, but I feel like mine tends to be, maybe I'm wrong, maybe I feel like this sort of negative high energy is really quite, but it sweeps you along. It's like being in a, like going to we talked about church and football matches and all sorts of things. You go in and there's all these other people and there's all this energy and it fills you with this sort of, these are my people, and there's this euphoria that comes from that energy that's around. So I can totally get why you get sucked into that. But I think
I'm cautious about like sort of any us and themism here, and thinking that we rant and rave about certain things as well. Like I think Trump and his ilk want to paint the left as like hair pulling, waving, yelling, like highly strung, entitled, snowflakes or whatever. But like if you look at it, like there might, for every one of those, there's someone with lots of facts and just speaking calmly, and then you've got a Greta Thunberg. So we've got it covered. And in the same way, I'm sure the right has, Jordan Peterson doesn't give you the sort of yelly kind of high pitched thing. He gives you the very calm thing. So I think I don't know that there's
maybe it's just the
divide between the types of people. I think it's
maybe it's just the TikToks we chose.
Let's hear from Jason Rees-Mogg. I think I'm just going to call him that. Yeah,
let's see what he has to say.
Jacob, this is about education, so get ready for some absolute toss.
I believe in choice. And I believe that people who make choices should also have responsibility for those choices. And if you have decided to come to university, you have made that choice, which will lead to you having higher earnings. Out of those earnings, you will pay back the cost of your education. If you don't pay for it, it has to be paid for by somebody else. And you may think it will be paid for by some mythical billionaire. It won't be. National insurance contributions start being paid by people earning about £120 a week. Do you think they should pay for the choice that you're making? VAT is paid by everybody. So what you're really saying is that poorer people than you should pay for your education when you've made the choice and you will get the benefit. But you know the best thing? That the poorest decile in our society have seen a 73% increase in... I believe in choice.
73% increase in, we'll never know.
Decile. There's a word nobody uses.
So what do we think? Tuition fees. Why are they necessary?
Michael.
It's about choice. Everyone should be able to choose. Well, first statement that is patently false is that getting a university education will lead to higher earnings, because there are a lot of degrees that are not job, don't get you a job. Like very few degrees now will have any bearing on what job you get at all. Yeah. So
that was one of my first reactions as well, especially if you go into research jobs or stay in academia where you might be inventing some amazing things that we all need, but you'll probably never earn the big bucks.
No.
You'll be lucky if you earn enough to pay off your student loan.
Like ever.
So that is I think a myth. Perhaps we could look up some statistics before we start making things up. But yes, I think that's
what do you think's the controversial point there?
Well, I think it's not true that I just wondered. I think it's not true. I don't know it's not true. Do you know what I mean? Like that's all I'm saying.
So maybe we could see the overall figures.
I think the other thing is this.
I'm sure it's a bit higher on average, but
I'm sure it is.
Not guaranteed by any. It's still a big risk to dump that much money into something that may or may not benefit you.
There's also this thing of if he's so concerned about the poorer decile of society and how poorly affected they are, then perhaps we could work on making sure they all have a living wage. Perhaps we could raise the level at which national insurance contributions are paid. Perhaps there's a million ways of solving that. The other thing is this idea that people who go to university do so to benefit themselves. And of course you do, but a society that has... The society needs people. I always find this argument very odd because civil society needs all manner of and experts in plumbing as well as experts in vaccine research. But, it's like, they're all make a valuable contribution, and you could make an argument to say, well, also people who go to university sacrifice their ability to get on the property ladder. They sacrifice their ability to earn a living. It's like,
if we are putting barriers in the place to someone in the bottom decile of society who is intensely interested in a subject, who has the potential to turn that interest that obsession into something that benefits our country for a start, but like humanity as a whole, to just say, well, no, because you haven't got enough money, you're just one of the people that isn't going to be able to afford it, is clearly not in the spirit of his defence of tuition fees.
I think his defence is... we all do that, construct an argument out of the things that are going to win it for us. But I think he's and this I don't know who thinks that some mysterious billionaire is going to pay their tuition fees.
We think that people that can afford to pay more taxes will cover the cost of it. Yeah, like they're fine to go over an old point. They're perfectly happy to cover the cost of submarines. Like, why is education a lower priority than in submarines? Oh, because someone might kill us. Fine, but let's it's not just like having experts either. It's just like a generally more educated society is going to just work better.
Yeah. Totally.
You're going to get less sort of political problems and all those things. And, up to the point that they overthrow you in your posh, with your posh voice. Because they've realised that they've been able to see. I wouldn't put it past him to be, hoping that to keep people docile in that decile, so that they don't see how hollow his thinking is on stuff. I thought it was interesting you raised VAT, because that there was that. I will dig up the Vox video on that, because that is a tax on the poor, like in terms of proportion of your salary. In proportion of your earnings, everyone pays a flat rate of VAT no matter their income level, which means that basically poor people have to spend a lot more on the VAT than... It's like a negligible cost to rich people, but it's like a huge chunk of any purchase to someone who's not rich. So he's right to raise that, and it's not something that's obviously how you do anything about. But at the end of the day, isn't taxation supposed to be about, like... If I've got 100 potatoes, then 6 potatoes doesn't make any difference. If I've got 2 potatoes, 6 potatoes is impossible. So, you've got to think about it in terms of value to the individual. And that's, it's fundamental to what taxation is supposed to do.
He's a whole different kettle of fish, isn't he? He's like some sort of caricature of a person, which makes him kind of, I think he's weirdly dangerous.
He's like that kid out of the Beano, isn't he? Walter, grown up.
Have I told you this on podcast that when I had a cleaning job in a sixth form block of a school while I was at university, and there was a kid that went to the school who was in the sixth form, and he always wore a Mac and had a briefcase, and he was like Tory boy, like he was Tory boy. He was Jacob Rees-Mogg, but he was at a comprehensive in Brighton. He wasn't like at Eton or anything. And he and I had this very argument about tuition fees, and his arguments weren't much different, and yet he was this. I just think it's
choice. Before we move on, let's just talk about the word choice, because It's not a choice because you have to put money down and you have to take a risk on it. It's not just like, here are two things with equal... It's like, oh, well, if I get this education, then I can have more. Well, why would... Given the opportunity... It's not a choice.
It's not also, choice implies that there's no aptitude required. And therefore, the people who can afford the education get the education instead of the people that have the correct aptitude and attitude get the education. Do you know what I mean? If you can buy your way into Oxbridge, then what is the point of Oxbridge? Do you know what I mean? It's like not that, but because this is the argument. It's like, I choose that the people with the most potential and the best work ethic and the biggest desire to contribute to a society go to university. That's my choice. I choose that people who are clever and good at something and have talent get to explore how far that will take them, rather than just the people whose parents can afford to nag them and push them.
Yeah, the choice should be, which thing am I going to... Like if you have some potential, your choice should be, well, which thing am I going to study? Not like, can I even study in the first place? But the other one is one last point is, if you do introduce tuition fees, then universities have to start treating students like customers.
Oh, which is a disaster.
Yeah, and you and Sharon will attest to this. And, Sharon's constantly having this thing where it's like they're coddling the students so much that what happened to, if you get the answer wrong, you don't get the mark. It's this whole thing. Everyone expects a different dynamic once you start charging for it. And it doesn't work for something like academia, where you just need to be on a different... You can't... If you turn academia, which is... doesn't it literally mean it doesn't matter? It's academic. If you try and turn that into this money framing, then you completely undermine so many facts.
I paid my fee. Where's my degree?
Exactly. That's just no way to run a higher education system.
No.
I've been thinking about money and the 80%, the wage gap, the gender pay gap. Do you think there's some sense in which money is a masculine preoccupation? To turn something into a score, like sports, make it into this sort of sports game where I can look at a table of the money, trying to put a financial value on everything, so that women then have to go, look, you're not putting a financial value on everything I'm doing, and now the only way to get things is with money now. There doesn't seem to be any other way to get stuff. So how does that work? There's loads... Can we either rethink what we think has financial value, or you have to make up the difference? Does that make sense?
Well, yes, it does, but I don't know. So there are a couple of things. But the first thing I was going to go into, but I think it's an unnecessary rabbit hole, which is the whole masculine trait, etc. But I think sort of traditionally masculine, maybe, and then women have traditionally done all the looking after the kids type thing. And as Kate Raworth argues in her book as well, this is a contribution to civic society, same as people who go to university. I interviewed for some research I did a guy that's this big pharma lobbyist. And he talks about the fact that, you go to university that's funded by, you've been educated, you get through the system, then you get employed by big pharma, and then big pharma charge society for the medicine that the public money has contributed to. And so there's something about that is, and if Ben Shapiro was here, he'd go, well, who took the risk? The guy that bought the machine that makes the medicine, or the guy that went to university? And it's like, yeah, mate, just can you park that for a second? It's like women staying at home and looking up, or any parent, frankly, we're in a reverse situation at the moment, but the parenting is an activity that contributes to society. Well, children that have been, whose parents have been able to parent them.
Yeah.
You know, that's how you learn. I mean, there's kids that get taken into care that like 4 and 5 and don't know how to use the toilet yet because they haven't had basic parenting. So like that's a very extreme and heartbreaking example. But this is, if you've not got time to parent your children, society suffers. We all, you know, we've all sat on a bus or in a park with a child whose parents just aren't paying enough attention to it or giving it enough love and support, whatever. So it's like this idea that that's not worth something is quite ridiculous.
So in a way, it's like a feat. So I kind of want to say maybe it's more about that small number of highly successful, you know, the aristocracy that imposed this whole monetary system on us, when before we had free markets, we had markets and like, you know, local currencies and like receipts and like exchange and that kind of thing, and that worked, but it was starting to undermine the power of the people with a legacy of money. So they were like, no, you're not allowed to use that
money.
You're not allowed to do that. You have to use our thing, which is sort of with its inherent interest and, you know, the sort of reinforcing of our own power. And then I guess there was probably a bit of a tipping where like it sort of does make more sense generally for women to, like, if you have to take time off to literally carry a child, then probably if one person in that marriage is going to have to leave the house, go and work for someone to earn enough money to buy the things, that's probably going to be the man in the family.
Probably going to be the person who can't breastfeed.
Yes, and then as time but really, like, why can't they just have their workshop and be in the village and kind of trade with the people around them? And why do they have to go over to this other place and kind of play this game that has been set up by this aristocracy in order to kind of milk them for interest? And now we see that like women, more and more women are having to work just because like the only way to get anything in this goddamn capitalism is to fucking give someone a disproportionate amount of your time for like a few little fucking purchasing points so that you can then go and like just get stuff to live, because they've rigged the system in favor of themselves. Yeah, maybe there was it was like a nudge economics thing, like, yeah, women are probably more likely to be useful at home, but really like no one should be doing this. And it really is this conspiracy of the ultra rich that is forcing us to play this unfair game.
I've heard a funny story though, just to slightly change the tune. Apparently there's some sort of service that is had to be set up or made available to the ultra rich who don't know how to switch on their washing machine or cook or entertain their children. So one of the stories this woman told was like, there's a mother with 4 children at home. I'm drowning in laundry. They had to teach her how to use the washing machine remotely, and then teach her that folding up socks can be turned into a game with your children. It's like, so, you know, it's like there are the ultra rich are suffering in new ways due to lockdown, so, unless they've bought their staff and can take them with them. But it's. I also think on the subject of this civics, is it civil or civic society? I don't know. But anyway, the likes of Jacob Rees-Mogg, I imagine, raises his children on a sort of separate sphere. I wonder how involved he is with raising, like they're on the subject of their parenting contribution. They're out, you know, as I understand it, these little kids that get, you know, packed off to boarding school when they're 4, 5, 6, like they're not being created as part of society. They are being institutionalized into a special layer of society that doesn't come into contact with all these other things that we all need to deal with. Yeah, I think, you know, there's something odd
if they
and
did
separate.
Just the fact that wealth buys you the ability to sort of like opt out of general civic society and not really feel the need to do anything about it because you're kind of like
you don't depend on it.
From it.
Don't care.
But, you know, I have to say, like, I felt uncomfortable with the studio where I am because it's right in the middle of some quite run-down council estates and sort of, like, I kind of go through and it's like, it's one of those places that feels sketchy and, like, this is not an irrational worry having been sort of, like, attacked more than once in this city. But, like, I think it's really important that we expose ourselves to these things so that we're, like, thinking about it. It's on our minds and it's something that we want to help improve. And if you can just, like, stay in your fucking locked compound and not have to deal with it, then I think a lot of bright people, a lot of well-educated people, because let's face it, the people with money are going to be better educated and they are going to be quite bright and good-looking. Like, it's just gonna smell nice. Like, it's what money gets you. Good manners, you know, all that kind of thing. But they're thinking about how to fucking sell advertising space or, like, trying out fucking, I've got an app that lets you... You know, they're putting all their time into these shiny things and sort of ignoring. They could probably do a lot more. I don't know, by just kind of like interacting with the people more, you know, around me.
Actually, I think all this, the example that I always have to go back to when it comes to sort of contribution to society is roads. Everyone has to drive on the roads.
Yeah.
Or be driven. Either in a bus or a special limo or private limo or whatever, but it's the same road. So let's all just fix the road and then you can drive on the road to your special mansion. That's cool. So that's what you want to do. But let's all drive on a nice smooth road that works well. So, and it's if you get hit by an ambulance, you don't get hit by an ambulance. You get hit by a car, an ambulance, the same ambulance gets called. They might redirect you later, but there is, you know, pretty much everybody goes to accident and emergency in the same, nearest to where they had the accident. So let's agree that there's a bunch of stuff that affects all of us.
We've only done 2 there, but that's fine, I think. Thanks for listening. If you like the podcast, go to grandpodcast.com or go to patreon.com and as well. Just subscribe. Come and join us on Patreon. You can come into our Slack and we'll just all hang out and just rant at each other or to give each other tips. I don't know. I don't know what's going to happen.
Or tell each other how clever we are.
Well, we could try doing that for our self-esteem.
Wow, you're so clever.
Wow, you're very clever. Yeah.
You're so clever. That's such a clever thing to say.
Where can people find you on the internet, Ivanka?
People can find me at Ivanka on Twitter.
You can find me at Michael Forrest. What was that thing again?
What, brightonnaturalhealthcentre.org.uk? Yes, go there. Sign up to a meditation class. Pay what you like, preferably a tenner.
Pay what you like.
But you can pay £3. But a tenner's better.
Cool. And come to goodtohear.co.uk/free, get my book, get onto my little train of as I develop my empire. Get there on the ground floor from the start. All right. and we'll see you next week. Where maybe, I don't know if we're going to do this again or we're going to talk about self-esteem or something. I don't know.
We'll see
I've
how
been
we
a bit
feel.
tired. I don't think I've been on top. It'll sound good once it's edited anyway. All the thinking will be sliced out and it'll just sound like I had some good
We'll
thoughts
just
straight
sound like
away.
so clever.
Yes.
All right then.
All right. And we'll see you next week. Bye.
Bye. Bye. Bye. Bye. Bye. Bye.